You're tuning into the Careering with Cameron podcast, your safe place for asking all the dumb questions about finding a job. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today on Careering with Cameron. Today we're going to talk about your handshake. And let's face it, I've done enough of these sessions with students and experienced professionals that we've talked about handshakes and networking, all of those fun topics in terms of making sure that your first impression is a great one. That is no longer the case. Today's handshake is not about a physical handshake. Today's handshake is actually utilizing AI. We're going to talk about how to utilize AI in creating something called your handshake to make sure that you're able to apply to positions in a way that benefits you and make sure that you put your best foot forward, or hand for that matter. We get a lot of questions about how do we use AI, what's going on with the AI screeners. We're being rejected from positions before they actually view them. There's quite a bit of confusion in terms of what has happened in the world of AI and the world of the application process. So I'm hoping that this is a very helpful podcast to explain some of the beginning steps of what is happening and what has changed with the application process. In terms of the handshake of 2026, it's basically moving the simple polished resume beyond just being a simple polished resume or profile and into autonomous execution, which is fun to say. Your personal AI agent is responsible for making sure that your information is going to that employer in a way that makes sense and in a way that's interesting. How do we do that? So myself included, we've done all kinds of things with taking resumes, comparing them to job descriptions, making sure they match up, making sure you get to 90%. Those are all things that you can do to help you to align. But let's kind of dig farther into this. So there's a few things that you should be aware of when you're working through the application process. One, if you go to a site or an organization that specializes in utilizing AI to apply to positions, that may be a solution for you. The challenge is very similar to the ones we've already found when we just get started with AI. When we just start using it as, I'm going to write a thank you letter, or I'm going to use it to respond to people, and I'm just going to trust AI is going to do it correctly. Let's not do that. Let's instead make sure that we're reviewing that work. We still need human eyes on the work. So make sure that it looks right, make sure that it reads right, make sure that it doesn't read like a bot wrote it, frankly. Certainly there are platforms and services you can use to help with that. But the bottom line is you, interestingly, have not been replaced. You still need to review what you're putting out as your application. First step in your process is committing to the fact that you're still going to have to review submitting resumes to job descriptions. And also the fact that you may be submitting a resume that you have no idea was submitted because, and we'll get to this, there are companies that are essentially looking for skill fits, people who align with what they're looking for to fill their team out, that are not using a job description because there isn't one. They're developing pipeline. We're going to cover that hopefully in today's podcast. But the first step really is to define your agent's mission. What's the goal for your AI agent to help you find that role? This needs to be specific. So I'm a big proponent, and it took me the better part of 5 years to really figure this out. The more specific you are with your ask, the better your results. And that goes for looking for positions. That goes for marketing a company. That goes for networking. The more specific you are about what you're looking for and what you want, the more ideal that connection is going to be for you and the person you're talking to. If you're generic, you use generalized terms, you want to go through with, as I call it, the approach of the whale shark, where you're going to go through with a huge mouth and basically consume all information that's there. You want to see every possible opportunity to make sure you don't miss anything. Understandable from a fear/flight perspective, but the challenge is that people can't remember what it is you actually want to hear about and how to connect you to those opportunities. So instead, let's be specific. That starts with your AI agent, which ideally you're setting up in whatever platform you like to use. That AI agent needs to understand what your goal is. And the agent also needs you to be able to tell it exactly what you're looking for in terms of a job or consulting arrangement or whatever it may be that you're after. You make sure that you're setting up hard filters, right? So those hard filters should include things like salary ranges. Are you looking at hybrid? Are you looking at remote? What about seniority levels? Like, you have to really educate that agent so that it's not going out and bringing back everything and actually creating more work for you and more work for everybody who's reviewing your information for positions that you probably shouldn't have applied for. The next piece is really to be able to identify role families. So instead of just one title, give your agent a list of related roles to help it broaden the search, but still make sure that it's in the right sandbox. So folks may have different roles, whether they're directors or vice presidents or leaders, associates, whatever that may be. Make sure that you have the right title for the level you should be at in terms of entering an organization so that your agent knows where to go and where to look and what you want to find, instead of it simply being a matter of, okay, well, my goal is to find all the jobs. That's not the goal. The goal is to make sure you find all the jobs that make sense for you to apply to. The next piece, moving off of the goal, is the data. So assemble your knowledge base. Okay. What does that mean? That means you want to be able to take the information pertaining to you and make sure that it's machine legible and that it can perform semantic matching, identifying your fit based on skills rather than keywords. That's a very different concept for some of the folks who have not looked for new opportunities in quite some time. This is not so much about just having the keywords in place. I often joke in coaching, there was somebody I worked with many, many years ago who figured out before AI that they could change the text in their resume to white text on white paper. And the goal was to then overlay their resume on top of that, but they would actually lay the job description behind it in white text. So they would always be selected as a candidate that matches, even if they weren't a candidate that matches. Please don't do that. It's just kind of a funny story in terms of how far we've come with the evolution of scanning your resume against what would be your screener, and in this case, probably a computer. Making sure your documents are machine legible. I didn't say resume, your documents. Okay. So we're going to essentially do that and then upload core documents. So we're talking about resumes, portfolio, past project descriptions, things that pertain to your work that'll have documents that it'll be able to read and analyze to make sure you're a good fit. Again, this is not all part of let me submit my resume into a job posting. This is beyond there, and this is getting more into making a profile for your agent to be able to connect you to those roles that make sense. You want to be able to make sure that you tag your skills. So you want to be able to explicitly tag and label your core competencies so that having things like Python or stakeholder management are there to help verify your background against the job requirements. So we're tagging those things in the documents that you're uploading as part of your core documents, making sure that they are obviously easily found. We want them to be highlighted. They should be pieces that are standing out more than others. Now, what are we doing beyond there? So you need to choose the Handshake tool that you're going to use. There's lots and lots of autonomous appliers. So the autonomous appliers are going to go ahead and they're going to fully automate the apply step while you're sleeping, golfing, whatever it may be. A couple of top examples from 2026, which we're early into that at this point, would be like Careery and Loop CV. Those will be appliers that can help you with your application process. Other ones getting beyond there would be things like matching scouts. So they're going to suggest roles that align closely with your unique profile. Some of the scouts that are out there would be Sonara and AutoJob. I feel like AutoJob is something that people are more familiar with, but there are other options is the point. The next piece is profile optimizers. So ensuring that your data is ready for the employer's AI systems. So Kick Resume, careerflow.ai are two of the big ones you can use. Those are things that will help you to essentially make sure that your entire profile is ready to be discovered by the organization, and that when they do discover it, they're able to consume it, for lack of a better term, into their systems as a good match to them. Now, this is the most important part. We have all worked with AI where we've asked it to do something and it came back with something completely different. Similar to the play on words we had to start this podcast around Handshake. There is a term which I love for AI called hallucination, because AI can hallucinate, and it can hallucinate facts, or it can also sound generic. You have to keep a human in your loop. That's you. Make sure you have some governance over what is being submitted and what you're using as your information for your profile with your agent. You have to fact check everything. If you are working with an AI agent and it is sharing that you're an expert or you've won an award and it's not true, that's a tough thing to recover from. Please, please, please make sure you have human guardrails in place. You're reviewing this information before it's going out to make sure that it's accurate and to make sure that it aligns with similar roles to the one that you were in so that it can identify what those roles look like. You also want to make sure that as part of this process, you're personalizing the outreach. There are so many different platforms at this point that can review your resume, submittal, profile, whatever it may be, and identify that it was written by AI. And frankly, it scares the reader, computerized or not, to say, this is not real, this might be a bot, this could be a scam, whatever it may be. But you want to make sure that it's personalized. Make sure that there's a reason for the end user human to reach out to you and make a connection with them. Doesn't always have to be specifically about the job and written like you're a robot, as tempting as it may be to behave that way. Having a personalized touch and making sure that you reviewed what you're sending is critical. The next piece is really the best part of the whole process, which is monitoring your success metrics. We live in the generation at this point, or the day and age at this point, where analytics are a huge part of everybody's day. Whatever you're doing, it can be measured. And so making sure that your success rate and success metrics are collected and also reviewed to ensure that you're getting the response you're looking for is important. So you want to look at your interview rate specifically, not just the number of applications that you've sent out. You can't entirely control the applications sent out. What you can look at is your interview rate, because that says you were one of a small group that they selected to talk to. That means you're on the right path. That's a good thing, right? How do we do that? So you can certainly use any of the Google platform in terms of spreadsheets or Excel or whatever it may be. You could even go back to our friend AI and ask it to analyze the metrics so that you can understand how many interviews we had. I also would encourage to look at how many interviews you've had with the same employer. And let me get deeper into that. Not only are we looking at how many interviews with that employer for one job, but how many interviews with that employer for maybe multiple jobs. So if this employer is somebody who you frequently get an interview with, whether you get the job or not, I'm thinking you're probably not still applying to your job if you've got it, but play along with me. If you're looking at the interview rate and looking at something that says you're doing pretty well in this space, that opens up some more doors. One, it says you're doing it right with that particular company. Two, it says probably organizations in that same space would have interest in you. There's a little bit of a breadcrumb there that says, hey, this industry seems to like me, or this employer seems to like me. Now, how do you take advantage of that from there? Well, we have tools. And so those tools are, you can certainly take that data in terms of where you've applied and what's happened with the application and say, okay, now I want to see organizations in the same industry to make sure that I'm applying to them as well. And beyond there, I want to look at organizations that maybe I have not applied to yet and figure out, like, are they reducing in size? Are they growing? Is there hiring that's happening there? That's something you can easily pull off of LinkedIn to be able to see what their hiring trends look like, to get an idea of maybe this is an organization that I'm not getting interviews with because they're not growing right now. Maybe they're not growing at a pace that the other ones are. So that's something to keep in mind. The other side of that would be to make sure that as you're looking at like what's happening with your interview process, are there specific people that you interview with better than others? So looking at the titles of the people you interview with, maybe you interview really well with HR. Maybe you don't. Understanding where that falls down in your process is what will help you to be more successful and will help you to hopefully work on, whether it's with AI or with a coach, how do I interview well? What am I missing? What is my story not telling that it needs to tell? Those are critical pieces. Every step along the way of your application process includes data, and that data should be able to help you to hone your message, to hone your application, and also to hone why do people come back to me and say they're interested in hiring me. Now, there's another whole piece to this, which is you're not looking for a job. You're still going to have, ideally, some type of profile online, likely LinkedIn. I'm sure at some point there'll be others, probably Facebook, probably Instagram, possibly even TikTok. So there's several different softwares and platforms where you can post your information, whether it's because you're an expert and you want to consult or you want to help people, whatever that may be. Those avenues are also open to organizations who are really heavily involved in developing a strong pipeline to be able to find your background and begin the process of considering you for their team. Now, these are roles that typically there are not job descriptions attached to yet. They're pipelining. They're getting to know you, they're understanding what your motivations are, how would you fit the organization. But this is part of the process for anybody who is not retiring in the next 10 minutes to have complete online. So same process. You want to make sure that when you look at LinkedIn and your profile there, and I'm going to pick on that because most people identify LinkedIn with job search, make sure that you have it set up so that your agent is going to be successful pulling that information off of LinkedIn to properly represent you to an employer. Your agent probably is not part of the equation if you're gainfully employed and happy, but their agent is. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable with what's out there. You want to make sure that you're doing things like posting on social media, because you don't ever really know when your employment status could change. And you want to have the ability to say, people call me and they ask me about positions, either because they want to know if I know somebody or they want to know if I'm interested. And little fun fact there, when they call you to see if you know somebody, they're also calling to ask you. So take that with some knowledge behind it. The other piece of that is that you want to make sure that as you move forward with managing your career, you're updating that information and making sure that you're current, so that the components that you're connected to in organizations are still appropriate for you to be connected to. So the searching side is finding you for positions that make sense, not positions that made sense 10 years ago. That's really important. The last part of this is just to circle back. There's a couple things that AI can do really well for you. It can make your day move much faster. You can cover a lot more ground. I believe on one of our previous podcasts, I did highlight the fact that utilizing AI for your job search in a completely uncontrolled environment, because utilizing AI in a completely uncontrolled environment means you don't have any idea where your resume is going, and you don't have any idea who's calling you about your resume. You have to have some human guardrails involved in this. You have to have an idea of A, the types of organizations you're interested in so that you know it's at least appropriate, and B, making sure that all of the information that you're sharing is accurate. And lastly, making sure that you have built the documents that you need for your agent that makes sense, so it has enough information to make those connections. I hope this was helpful. There's so much that we'll be digging into over the next few weeks around AI in terms of job search, but I know there's a lot of questions about how do I utilize AI? How do I improve my application process? How do I beat AI in some cases? I want to beat AI. I want to get beyond their AI screening and get in front of a human. The old school technique of networking is still very much successful. We're talking, from the data that I saw actually in the past week, something like 60% of organizations are utilizing AI, I'll call it correctly, in terms of screening. So that means 40% still open to old school connecting, who do you know, all that good stuff. That's not going to change tremendously quickly. So it's important to still be networking. It's critical to make sure you are helping people who reach out to you, especially if you are not looking for a job. If you help one person, especially if they're someone who is looking and has been looking for a little bit, and really they're just looking for somebody that you can connect them with that might have an interest in sharing either opportunities or more connections. Critical that you are not the ghost on the end of that. People will remember the people who help them, just like you'll remember things that are specific. Somebody who helps them is a very specific, passionate, emotional connection where I promise you that if you're in a position where you're looking for an opportunity and you've helped some people along the way, they will help you no matter what they're doing. They'll stop and help you. If you're somebody who does not, and there are organizations where most of their resources were contained internally and they did not help anybody externally. They just didn't. That was just what they did. They have a much harder road, much longer road to get their external community to support them, regardless of how many hours they volunteer. Please make sure you're helping people along the way. It only takes a few minutes. If you want to schedule it into your Friday where you respond to 5 emails, which would be a lot, that's great. Do that. But please make sure you're helping people along the way if your expectation is not to be left out in the dark, in the cold, when you need help. Please do this. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I've enjoyed putting it together. As I said, we're going to cover more in terms of AI topics with job search and career management. I look forward to seeing you in the future. And please let us know if there are things that we can cover that you are concerned about, that you are confused about. Submit those ideas over to us and we'll take care of them. If you like this episode, please subscribe. Please give us 5 stars and share it with somebody else that can use this. Thanks so much.
Stay in the loop at careeringwithcameron.com/talent connect, or check out our website, www.talent-connect.net.